Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Politics. It's me, your favorite Ohioan. Today, we're going to be doing the 2022 updated governor's prediction. We did the Senate prediction yesterday. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Not a whole lot to say to begin the intro. So we're going to start by filling in the safe Republican states, which include states of Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, the great state of Alaska, states of Iowa, New Hampshire, and Vermont and New Hampshire. Confusing those two there. Um, and that's actually going to be it for this. And Texas as well. Greg Abbott is relatively well liked. He appeals to both the Trumpian and the more moderate base, especially suburban voters. And he's beating Beto O'Rourke by about 12 to 15 points in the polls right now. Kind of like the balance of the polls have him up by about 12 to 15 points. So, and since I use 10 plus a safe, I think Abbott's going to win by about 13 to 14 as of now. Um, let's fill in the safe Democrat states, which includes those of California, Hawaii, probably Colorado, because Jared Polis is super popular there for very little reason. He's just well liked there. The incumbent Democrat is very popular in Colorado. So although Colorado is normally normally a more competitive state. I mean, Republicans probably don't have much of a chance at winning it, but it is usually a little bit more competitive. But I don't think it's going to be under 10, just because Jared Polis is just so well liked there. Instead of Maryland, this Larry Hogan is term limited, as well as his of Massachusetts and New York. New York could be very interesting. We have a great candidate in Lee Zeldin in the state, and with Kathy Hochul not being very well liked among Democrats or independents, and Republicans being very energized, as we saw in the primary, I think that could be an interesting race. But as of now, I'm just putting it as safe. I want to see more polling and more data come out of the state before I make a definitive call. Although there definitely could be something there. So we're going to start by filling in the likely Republican and Democratic states, which includes states of Kansas, Ohio, Georgia, and Florida for the Republicans, and that's going to be it, I believe. Yes. The state of Ohio, DeWine is very well liked among moderate Republicans, independents, and moderate Democrats. Nan Whaley, the Democratic nominee in Ohio, is very left leaning, and that's going to alienate a lot of moderate suburban Democrat voter types, and they're going to actually vote for DeWine since DeWine is more moderate. Meanwhile, I think a lot of conservative Republicans are going to split between DeWine and Peterson. So while Neil Peterson may be a big threat in the state of Ohio to Mike DeWine, I think in the end, DeWine is just because Nan Whaley is so left-leaning. A lot of more moderate voters are going to vote for DeWine, and DeWine's going to win by a likely margin. Because as I've seen in polling, even with Peterson at like 15% or so, yeah, DeWine's still winning by like 10, 15 points. So it's a little too early to exactly tell what will happen in the state. But as of now, I think Ohio is going to be likely Republican, and DeWine's going to have a relatively easy re-election. The state of Kansas, Laura Kelly, the incumbent Democrat, is not necessarily unpopular. She's not popular either. She's pretty much dead on arrival, though. She only won because of vote splitting and because the incumbent Kansas Republican was super unpopular. So she's going to lose in a red wave year. State of Georgia, Brian Kemp is very popular among moderates because of the 2020 election stuff, and every conservative Republican is going to vote for him just to keep Stacey Abrams out of office. He's going to win by like 5 to 6 points. Kemp's going to have an easy re-election. State of Georgia, Ron DeSantis is very popular. In the state of Florida, we've seen Florida take massive shifts to the right recently. And I think and polling shows DeSantis up by about 7 to 9 points. And I think he will win by about that margin, possibly over 10, depending on who the Democrats put up and national environment. But I think as of now, it's going to be likely. The likely Democratic states include states of Illinois and Connecticut. I mean, Rhode Island. I cannot talk today. That is Rhode Island. Rhode Island is always a little bit competitive in red wave years. It's usually under 10. Alan Fung, who is a mayor of a city in Rhode Island, he has ran for governor the last 2 elections. He's always made the race relatively interesting. This time he's running for Congress, however, and he is polling very well in the congressional district he's running in. So I think if Alan Fung gets a lot of turnout for his election, he may bring the margin of victory down, but just a hair for the Democrats. Instead of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker is relatively popular among Democrats, and Darren Bailey is a good nominee. I'm just not sure he's going to be good enough to win. We'll have to wait and see. Polling shows Darren Bailey up by. Polling shows J.B. Pritzker leading Darren Bailey by about 10 percentage points in the state. I think it'll be a little under 10. I think Pritzker wins by like 7, 8 points. Let's bring the lean and tilt states. We're gonna start by filling in the lean states for the Republicans, which include the states of Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and I believe that is it. The lean states for the Democrats include states of Michigan, Minnesota, Connecticut, And that is also it. So Nevada is going to lean to the Republicans. Joe Lombardo's a good candidate. He has a lot of electoral appeal in Clark County. He'll get a lot of more moderate. He's won there before. He'll get good margins in Clark County. And with Republicans doing well across the state, I think he'll win relatively handily statewide by about 2-3 points or so. Steve Sisolak's not a hated incumbent, but he's certainly not liked either. He's relatively vulnerable. State of Arizona, Kari Lake's is a lot. People are saying, "Oh, Kari Lake's gonna lose. She's gonna be just fine. She's gonna win the Republican primary just fine, and she's gonna go on to win just fine." She's gonna a lot. If the Democrats had a more moderate candidate for governor, I would maybe be sounding the alarm. But I think Kari Lake's gonna do just fine. She's won by 3 to 4 points. Like I said, if the Democrats had a more moderate nominee, I think I would be kind of sounding the alarm. But the fact that the Democratic nominee is also super liberal. We kind of have like two more radical candidates, I guess you could say, in Arizona. Although I personally think Kari Lake's a little more moderate. And so a lot of the more Arizona is still a relatively Republican-leaning state. It's just not a big fan of Trump. There's no way these people are voting for a Bernie Sanders type. They're going to turn out for Kari Lake, and so I think Kari Lake wins relatively soundly. Although I don't think she's going. A lot of those voters are going to be like big fans of hers, but they're going to vote for her just because the Democrats' nominee is very far left. State of Wisconsin. Tony Evers is dead on arrival. Cleefish is probably going to win by 4, if not 5 points. I think Michaels might only win by like 2 or 3. But no matter what, Tony Evers is going to lose. Evers has done basically nothing. Every accomplishment Tony Evers campaigned on back in 2018 has been shut down by the Republican state legislature. And now all he's doing is shilling for abortion, which isn't even working there. He's not even going to get the Democrats to turn out for him because he can't even get anything done. So Tony Evers is dead on arrival. The state of Michigan, Minnesota, and Connecticut are all going to lean to the Democratic Party. The state of Minnesota, Scott Jensen's an okay nominee. He's not great, but he's not bad either. He might make things interesting, considering the fact that he has made polling relatively tight. He's only down by like 3 points or so. But I think in the end, Tim Walz is just a popular incumbent. He's going to win. And with the massive growth the Minneapolis area has seen in recent years, with the shift Minnesota took to the left in 2020, I think that the Democrats are going to hang on there. The state of Michigan, unfortunately, it looks like Gretchen Whitmer is going to hang on. Whitmer is a should have been an easy pickoff, honestly. Michigan should be tilt, if not maybe even lean Republican. We kind of got screwed over by the ballot initiatives. Some of our best candidates, including James Craig, the Republican frontrunner for governor, all got disqualified because they did not have enough signatures. And so now we have a bunch of these randos who aren't going to win. I think Garrett Soldano has the best chance of victory. He is running a solid campaign. He's he's running on the issues that really matter. But then again, even Whitmer has a pretty high approval rating. Polls show Whitmer doing very well, and it'll be very difficult for Republicans to unite around a candidate this late in the race. I mean, Tudor Dixon's would also be a decent candidate, but even then, I think she loses by a lean margin, just because we don't have a good candidate. We have no one for Republicans to unite around, and Whitmer's coalition is still very strong. The state of Connecticut is going to lean Democrat because Ned Lamont, although he's very popular, Bob Stefankowski, the Republican nominee, who is the same guy who ran against Lamont in 2018, made the race very competitive. Connecticut in 2018 was a blue wave year. Democrats did very well across the country, and despite that, Bob Stefankowski, the Republican nominee, only came within 3 or 4 points of flipping the state of Connecticut. And so he is very popular in the state. But that said, Ned Lamont does have a pretty high approval rating, so I think that's going to even out. And Connecticut's going to lean to the Democrats. The final 4 states are all actually going to tilt to the Republican Party. Oregon, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Maine. All tilt Republican states. We'll start in the great state of Maine. Paul Lepage, the former governor, is relatively popular there. He's the former governor. He's pretty well liked. He's socially conservative to turn out the more rural areas, but he also has enough moderate appeal to turn out the more liberal areas. He'll do just fine. Janet Mills is not super popular. She's just kind of like she's not disliked in the state, but she's also not liked. She's just kind of And so because of that, I think that Paul Lepage does manage to pull off a very narrow victory. Polls have the race relatively competitive. There's actually a Democratic internal poll that came out that had Lepage only down by like 3 or 4, and all the polls show Lepage within striking distance. And I think once the campaign kind of kicks off a little bit more, I think Lepage will very narrowly pull ahead and win this race. Instead of Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano is he's a pretty solid nominee. He's losing in the polls by about 3 to 4 points now, which is expected. Republicans always do very poorly in polling around now. But the fact that he is only down by 3 or 4 points or so does tell me he's going to do just fine. If you look at the race, he has a relatively high approval rating among Republicans, and Democrats despise him. Yeah, I can't talk. I'm sorry. uh, yeah, Mastriano he has a little bit of work to do with more moderate voters, but I think in the end he does pull off the victory very narrowly. Josh Shapiro is pretty radical on social issues. He has that whole thing with the abortion. I think that's going to hurt him a lot, and same with LGBT issues. Mastriano is going to get crazy turnout in red areas, and I think with Oz being on the ballot, he's going to turn out some more moderate voters who are going to hold their nose and also vote for Mastriano. I think it's going to be close, but I think Mastriano does pull off the victory because he is a solid candidate for Pennsylvania. He's a good fit for the state. State of New Mexico, Mark Ronchetti is a great candidate. The weatherman is going to bring the storm. Mark Ronchetti is a weatherman who's a very popular weatherman across the state. He ran for Senate in 2020. He outperformed Trump by 5 points, made the race way more competitive than it should have been. He's now running for governor, and he is running an incredible campaign. Polls show him very narrowly pulling ahead of the absolutely despised incumbent Democrat governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham. She has a bunch of scandals, sexual assault allegations. She's just not that well. She's so many scandals. People don't like her in the state, and Mark Ronchetti is the perfect candidate to swoop in there and narrowly pull off a victory in the great state of New Mexico. State of Oregon, we've talked about this before. Might seem a little far-fetched, but I think it's going to be to age very well. And there's the fact that Oregon is going to tilt to the Republican Party. Christine Drazan's a solid nominee. She'll get strong turnout among more rural areas. We'll also do decently with more suburban moderate voters who are maybe upset with inflation and crime, stuff like that. The Democrat ticket, meanwhile, is going to be split with Betsy Johnson, who is a super weird candidate. I talk about her all the time. But she's very liberal on social issues like gay marriage and abortion. But she's actually very America first on things like immigration and trade. So I think she'll do decently. It's been in some rural areas, but I think most of her support is going to come from Bernie Sanders supporters in the Portland area. That's really going to hurt Tina Kotek, the Democratic nominee. So yeah, the Democrat vote is going to be split between an independent and a Democrat. I think in the end, Christine Drazan, who is already polling very well, there's only one poll of the race so far that has Christine Drazan up 2 because of the vote splitting. I looked into that poll, and it's actually very solid. It's actually very well conducted and very well founded. So although it says Republican internal, I think that poll is pretty accurate as of now. Obviously, things can change, but Christine Drazan is the solid nominee, and with the Democratic vote being split, I think she does pull off a very narrow victory. So thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you have any problems with my predictions or you have anything to say, please comment down below, and I hope to see you in the next one.